La bola se vuelve loca. Ábrame la puerta porque me voy. Adiós.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Plakata Nation in our Esquina podcast network. So welcome everybody. I'm here joined by the one and only my cuz, mi primo from the Bronx. What's going on? And also the insider of insiders, Jesus Ortiz, the first Latino president of the Baseball Writers Association. Yeah, we got the news that are breaking right here. Jesus, what you got? We got to talk about Juan Soto, guys. We got to go immediately to him.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
It's been a crazy week with baseball, like Matt Freed to the Yankees, Juan Soto to the Mets. Those are the big ones, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and,
I immediately would. I have to default and immediately talk about the biggest contract in the history of Major League Baseball, Juan Soto, and the way things have transpired. You know, he got welcomed to New York. He had his press conference. It was extremely exciting for all Mets fans, Yankee fans. You know, tweeting all over the place. You know, very hateful messages towards Juan Soto. I was like, what is going on here? But I perfectly understand it. A lot of Yankee fans were expecting him to come back to the Bronx for many reasons. It is said that the Yankees were definitely in the sweepstakes and they really went after him. But the Mets, at the end of the day, Steve Cohen was able just to pull an ace from underneath his sleeve and land the signing. And it was very interesting to see him come to New York. You saw the warm welcome that the Mets fans gave him. You know, the press was there, and he seemed like he was very poised, calm, and collected. And there was one quote that I know you guys want to dive into because it was extremely interesting. Juan Soto knows how to turn the page quite quickly. I think it's one of his strengths.
yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely plays it pitch by pitch. No,
It's
that
my
great.
pitch, that's right.
You know, one of the OG Aresquina guys, Manuel Gomez from New Jersey Advanced Media, one of my guys, one of my dearest friends, asked the best question in terms of getting the most viral quote when he asked Juan Soto, like, "Hey, have you talked to the guys, the Yankees?" And he said quite simply, "I haven't talked to any of those guys. We talked to them through the playoffs, into the playoffs, but after that, I haven't talked to any of them." Essentially, is what he said. He moved on, and
Yeah.
and I think you Carlos, more than anybody here, more than many people, know how Scott Boras works. I've covered Scott Boras, and I know that he likes to keep the message simple and through one person, usually through Scott Boras. So I wonder if part of that was, hey, change your number, don't talk to anybody, just let me handle it. And it's a very Scott Boras thing to do, right? Like, he's very smart, he's the best in the business for a reason. And I wonder if part of Soto not talking to his Yankees teammates was a decision to not be interfered with, to just let this play out and let the person you pay good money to handle all the talking.
Yeah, and this is obviously pure speculation, right? But at the end of the day, I do understand how Scott works. You know, he was my agent as well. And look, he is very clear on the fact that he is all business. And Juan Soto going to the highest bidder pretty much is evidence of that, right? I mean, we know how great that team was, the Yankees, right? And how well they worked together. They really worked in synergy. Juan Soto fit there so beautifully, right? And I think it would have been the perfect ending to the story, let's say, or the beginning of the story if he would have signed with the Yankees. Like, okay, this is what you saw. How about what's coming, right? I think all Yankees fans were expecting that to happen, especially after getting to the World Series with Juan Soto in the middle of the lineup, that it was formal, right, to have him there, that 1-2 punch of Judge and Soto, and to think that it was going to happen for years to come. Well, think again. It's not happening. it's absolutely over. And look how quickly, you might want to say that he is a true professional, right? And it's kind of cold blooded at the end of the day. It's like, you know what? I'm done with the Yankees. Now I'm a free agent. That's it. Now you're just part of the market. And if you want me to sign back, then you have to come to play because there's incredible competition, as we saw. Ultimately, the Mets land him, and now he can just turn the page. Changing the number, maybe a strategic type of decision that they made to make sure they stayed focused on making sure that they went out there and got the best contract possible. Yeah, that might be true. We're speculating, but that's one of the things that could be in play. And then him just not having conversations with his teammates is also another strategy, which is like, look, I cannot give any type of hints. I don't want to slip up. I don't want to say that I want to stay. I don't want to lose leverage. All of those things could be in play. But once again, this is all pure speculation. We're just making educated guesses at the end of the day.
I'll say this, and this is coming from like a fan perspective, obviously a Yankees fan perspective. It was those, and Jesus, I know you're gonna chime in on, because you know the other side of being a reporter and getting news left and right. As a fan, I mean, all I was doing was just scrolling Twitter, just like what's going on. Oh, the Yankees were the favorites. Then it was like the Red Sox, and it was the Mets. It was, and then for that day a day before he signed, they were saying, "Oh, the Yankees are the favorites." I was feeling good as a fan, like, okay, we're, maybe it's gonna happen, and then boom, it happened. And that's the thing. In all honesty, I expected the move for a few reasons. I know Scott Boras. And again, through Carlos, I met Scott Boras. I met some of his people. And then as a fan of baseball, how he is with his players. It's all business. It's about getting the most bang for your buck. Well, guess what, people? Who has the most bang for their buck? It is Steve Cohen, okay? I said it in the group chat with my brothers here. The game has changed, and people need to understand that. Steve Cohen has finally let everybody know, put the league on notice. I am about winning, and I want to win, and I will pay for whatever it is at all costs. And you saw that to the tune of $765 million plus, because there's a lot of little things in there in that contract that are going to push that well over the $800 million mark. That man said, I want Juan Soto on my team, and he's going to be on my team, and he is not going to stop. I'm telling you right now, I'm throwing this out there since, Carlos, you said it, we're speculating. I'm going to go reckless speculation here. You ready to hear this?
Let me hear it.
Remember when you heard this first? Vladimir Guerrero was going to be on the Mets next year. That's happening. That is happening because it's happening, dude. I'm telling you. He wants to win, and he has to. The Mets, let me tell you, the Yankees needed Juan Soto. Don't get me wrong. I'm upset. But the Mets needed him more. Why? They're directly competing with the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the Don right now in all of baseball. And the Mets have to compete directly with them. So Cohen is going to use his best weapon. What's his best weapon? He has the biggest wallet out of everybody in all of MLB. And he's going to do that. And he's going to grow. This team is not done. Granted, listen, they signed Soto. They've done a few moves, but they haven't really done more. They will do more, and they will continue. So everybody around baseball, and Jesus, again, you touched upon it. That's why a lot of owners didn't want Steve Cohen owning the Mets, because they were afraid of what just happened. And as he said in the press conference, and as he said many more times, I want to win multiple championships. And he is going to put the Mets in the position to win no matter what. Again, as a Yankee fan, I'm upset. I heard that quote. That quote crushed me, because I said, man, how did Aaron Judge reach out to them? How did Jazz Chisholm? How did Garrett Cole? And then you find out, oh, yeah, he changed his number. And then, it's like when you said it, like, well, he had their number. He had their number. He could have called them. This was all business, bro. He put himself in position to get the biggest contract. He played in front of one of the biggest bats in all of baseball, got paid off of it, and he said, you know what? I'm taking my talents to Queens. And here we are. This is the future. I think as Yankee fans and as baseball fans, we have to accept what just happened and what is going to happen.
Hey, and Jesus, before you even chime in, because I want to hear what you have to say as far as like, hey, is this a bad contract? Is this a good contract? And this is my take on all that. Say, can we put all that to rest? I mean, like, forget about it. Like, at the end of the day, Steve Cohen put the money. He came out and he showed them the money. It doesn't even matter whether we believe it's going to pan out in 10 years or not. Remember what Steinbrenner used to say. Because I think Steve Cohen is that new Steinbrenner. Like, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to pay what I got to pay. It does not matter. And at the end of the day, it's about landing your big fish, right? Like, pride. Steinbrenner said it. Yes, I'm prideful. This is about pride. I care about being the top dog. So Steve Cohen is the top dog right now. He got the most coveted player in all of Major League Baseball in this free agent period, right? In this free agency. He got him. So he can say, I got him. How much did it cost me? I don't care. So when you start talking about, like, diamond dollars, how do we make sure that we strategize and we utilize our resources correctly to maximize our money and our spending and our budget? You think Steve Cohen is thinking about that? He knows he got a great player. Now, the thought of, is this going to pan out at the end of the year? At the end of the day, is this going to be one of those things that actually make us a contender, make us a winner, and win a World Series? Well, the team is better, right? So I think we waste our time trying to debate whether this is a great contract or not. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so let's just let it rest. It's a free market, right? And it's supply and demand, period. And Steve Cohen won that race. So let's stop. You look at Twitter and you're like, oh, this is, he got overpaid, this and that. Overpaid? Like, overpaid for what? Like, that's the market right now. That is the market. Yep. He got paid what he deserved because he's put up the numbers and he is so young. And you project him into the future and you say, if he does 85% of what he did last year, then it's going to be a great contract. He's going to sell tickets. As we already know, the Mets, ticket sales has skyrocketed just because of the Juan Soto signing. And Steve Cohen has got a smile year to year. So before you go in there, well, I needed to say that, but I want to see, Jesus, your objective analysis of this contract.
I think this is a great contract for the Mets. I think this is a great contract to have been avoided by everybody else. And let me explain why. The Mets needed Juan Soto. The Mets are competing against the New York Yankees every day of the year. Regular season, off season, they compete against the New York Yankees. The way, if you even consider just the way that the quote was seen by Yankees fans and Mets fans, it was perfect because Yankees fans, it broke their hearts. Mets fans, it's like, man, he's ours. Like, he is the Mets. And, I covered the Mets for 3 years. I know that in many ways, a Yankee losing streak is a bigger story in New York than a Mets winning streak. And that sucks when you're a Mets beat writer. And I'm sure it sucks when you're, a Mets employee. But when you get Juan Soto and you win the bidding war and you take him from the Bronx to Queens, it means more. None of these deals historically pan out. 15 years, 41 years old. But if you're going to, he'll be 41 when this deal ends. But if you're going to give it to somebody, I would probably have given it to a guy who's probably better defensively. Like, is he going to be a designated hitter by year 7? Is he going to be a designated hitter by year 10? He'll definitely be a designated hitter by the time that the contract ends. But I really think that the Mets had to do this. If you put Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto in the same lineup and all those young guys who really showed out this year, I have to think that the Mets are the Dodgers' biggest competition for the NL title next year. They still need to add some pitching, I think. But David Stearns, the guy who's running baseball operations there with the Mets, is one of the best in the business. He's done more with less, as he did with Milwaukee, and now he's in New York. And now he has to show that he could do more with more. If I'm the Yankees, I'm happy that I didn't win that. Like, if I'm building the Yankees, because that's a deal that you're like, man, The guy, defensively, he's not great. And I'll tell you this, and we'll transition here to this conversation. Kyle Tucker, Juan Soto. If you're the Yankees, who would you rather have in right field? I'd rather have Kyle Tucker than Juan Soto in right field and in the batter's box long term. If you look at their numbers, they're very similar. The only difference to me, and why probably I would want Soto over Tucker, is because Soto, can play in New York. But I guarantee you, we're going to have this conversation next year again. Kyle Tucker, did he end up with the Yankees or not? Because I don't know that the Chicago Cubs are going to be able to keep him. And there's going to be another bidding war. And you have to decide, can Kyle Tucker play in New York? Because the Yankees, he'd be perfect. Judge and Kyle Tucker, whew, that's a great, but
It's a great comparison right there, Susan. You bring up a great point because we're looking at Kyle Tucker, and you see that he's going to be over with the Cubs. Now the conversations are being had, right? How do we extend him? But do you think Tucker, in his right mind, if he's able to put up a pretty solid season, do you think, seeing what's happened in free agency, seeing that he had comparable numbers to Soto, and he saw what Soto was able to accomplish, right? It would be silly for him to perhaps sign that deal, an extension, knowing that if he went to free agency, it's going to be another bidding war, and the Yankees are certainly going to be part of that. And it's going to be a reasonable contract, let's say, for the Yankees, especially if the numbers are comparable. Because we look at comparisons as far as slugging percentage, his on base percentage. Soto's got him by a little bit, but Tucker actually does get on base quite often. Has very good discipline at the plate, hits for power. Comparable to Soto, plays a better right field. All those things, right? So I love the way you analyze this. You say, is this a good miss for the Yankees? The Mets had to absolutely sign Soto, but the Yankees are not totally upset or in the dumps about missing out on him, because that opens up the possibility of perhaps going after Tucker, who's very likely to try free agency. The Cubs are going to come hard at him, but I'll be shocked if Tucker signs a deal before testing free agent waters, especially knowing what just happened in the market. I really like Kyle Tucker as a ball player, and he's going to be an extremely coveted free agent if he goes out there and just goes out and has a solid year. He is a great player.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have great pitching to win, right? So if I'm the Yankees, I'm happy that I spent that money on a guy named Max Fried. Like that. But that was also a risky. All these deals are risky, all of them. Do you spend that much money? Closer to home in Houston, I think the Astros did the right thing by trading Tucker. As we just praised Tucker, right? But when you consider the game is built to punish winning, it's built to be cyclical. So you're rewarded for winning with less bonus pool money, lower draft picks. So therefore, the people who are struggling get rewarded for struggling to build up. But the Astros, outside of the Dodgers, have maintained winning like nobody else in baseball for the last 10 years, since 2015. Since 2015, they've only missed the playoff once, and they were in 4 World Series during that stretch. And they needed to replenish the farm system. The penalties for the cheating scandal have really taken their toll. And, a lot of people in baseball didn't think that the Astros would trade Kyle Tucker because Jim Crane has traditionally kept his guys because the window to win was open. But what I reminded people, when you let Springer go for nothing, you had Correa, you had Kyle Tucker waiting in the wings, you had Jordan Alvarez waiting in the wings. When you let Correa go, You had Jeremy Peña waiting in the wings. You had a young Kyle Tucker to help anchor the team with Jordan Alvarez, and obviously we all know Bregman and uh, and Jose Altuve. But when you lose Kyle Tucker, which they would have lost at the end of next year, there was no Kyle Tucker like in the farm system ready to go. There was no Jordan Alvarez like in the farm system. So you had to do this move because you know who represents Kyle Tucker. His name is Scott Boras. He is the best at getting the best deal possible. Well, the Astros can't compete with that. They won't compete with that. And if I were the owner of a team, I would be more like the Astros than the Mets because the Astros can't afford to make those mistakes.
Well, okay. Oh, wait. You're talking about risk mitigation here. You just said mistakes. Like so. So what you're hinting, because a lot of people say, are the Mets dumb by committing all that money? This is not this is not blind spending. This is understanding the risk, right? Steve Cohen understands the risk. He still spends the money, right? Do not be mistaken thinking that this is Steve Cohen thinking that everything's going to go perfect. No, he understands there's risk in this contract. And you know what? He's willing to take it. Right now, when you have to be a lot more responsible because maybe your pockets is not as deep, that's something you have to take into consideration. And we've seen examples in the past. Shoot, we could go back to Mookie Betts with the Red Sox. They waited way too long to either sign Mookie Betts or trade him, and they didn't get as much as they could have. So you have to understand. We can go to Francisco Lindor, where we're there over there in Cleveland. It's like they waited too long to do something with Francisco Lindor. So sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and say, you know what, Kyle Tucker, I'm going to trade you. Why? Because I have to think about signability, cuz. Like, you got to think about signability. If I cannot sign the player, he's got to go. And I have to get something in return. That's the way you wheel and deal in this industry. Unless you're Steve Cohen and you can say, you know what, I'm going to take a huge risk. And even if things do not go, it's almost like investing in crypto, right? I would say crypto is a lot more volatile than Soto, but you understand what I'm trying to do. It's like, listen, I'm going to go for it. And it's a very educated bet. You know, I'm taking a educated risk. If it pans out, I'm a genius. And if it doesn't, I'm willing to take it. I'll take it on the chin. And that's going for you. The Astros cannot do that. They can't.
And I'll tell you this, the guys you just mentioned, Mookie Betts, Francisco Lindor. Kyle Tucker's a great player, a really, really good player. But nobody, absolutely nobody in baseball would ever tell you that Kyle Tucker means to the Astros what Mookie Betts meant to the Red Sox or what Francisco Lindor meant to Cleveland. So Cleveland waiting too long to get rid of Francisco Lindor. He was the face of the organization.
Yeah.
In Houston, the face of the organization is Jose Altuve. And one thing that I wanted to point out about Scott Boras that it's very important to point out, not that we're doing Scott Boras's bidding because he does a good job doing it for himself. Scott Boras will get you the best deal you want. Ultimately, the player decides. If Alex Bregman wants to stay in Houston, Scott Boras will get him the best possible deal to stay in Houston. Jose Altuve wanted to stay in Houston, so Scott Boras got him the best possible deal for him to stay in Houston. If you say, get me the best deal possible, he'll get you that. But he'll also, it's not always all about getting the best deal, the most money. It's about getting you the best deal that you want to have, meaning Jose Altuve in February on his birthday signed a deal that will make him an Astro for life, an extension. If Alex Bregman wants to be an Astro for life, there has been a deal on the table for him to accept. There's likely a lot more money elsewhere, and that's what he has to decide. How much money is too much money? or isn't enough money, I should say. But I think when you mentioned Mookie Betts, when you mentioned Francisco Lindor, those guys got traded, right?
Yeah. Too late.
Yeah,
Too late. They got traded
And
too
too.
late.
and none of those guys you'd say like if we were doing a draft at the same age those guys were traded, I guarantee you we would all pick Kyle Tucker number 3. If
Yeah.
you said I take Mookie Betts number 1, Francisco Lindor number 2,
Hmm.
at the time they were traded.
Right.
Now you might take, even now I think, like, who would your top 3 right now if you could say pull one from those teams? Who would you pick first? How
Mookie.
about you?
Yeah, I would say I would go with Lindor. But this is the thing, though. I think you are right at that, but we're underestimating the Tucker value.
And,
Oh no,
and
no,
you know what?
we're not though. We're not, because we just said he's great. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like,
What
when
he meant to the team.
yeah,
I think, I have always regarded Tucker as a very underrated player. We're talking about
Hmm.
Silver Slugger Award winner. We're talking about Gold Glove winner. So, he can play defense, and also a World Series champ. So I'm like, man, this guy is a pillar on that
Yeah.
organization. So I think it stings more than they're leading us to believe, losing Tucker.
no, no,
Let me add this on that. Let me add this on Kyle Tucker. And because Jesus, you said something about Tucker. His agent is not Boris. It's another brand. I think it's called XL Sports. That's his agent. But yeah, I looked it up. It's XL. But let me tell you this. Now, this is the Scott Boris effect, though, and the Juan Soto effect for most. I think going forward now, you're gonna see a lot of these guys at this age who are at the level of a Kyle Tucker. They're gonna test free agency. I think we're gonna start seeing less and less of this extension thing, and more of these guys saying no. The market is bigger now. And again, the common denominator of this episode, folks, if you haven't figured it out, is Steve Cohen has the most money. So he has changed the game in the aspect that all these dudes now are going to be like, let's go to free agency. Kyle Tucker most likely told the Astros, I'm going to free agency. I don't care what you throw at me. Again, speculation. I'm going to free agency. And yeah, you guys are right. It's about trading these guys at the right time. And the Astros did what they had to do. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the haul they got from the Cubs. I'm assuming it's a good haul because you're moving a guy of that caliber. But I know that Kyle Tucker is going to go and have the season of his life now, because he knows what's waiting for him at the end of the rainbow is a massive pot of gold coming from a bunch of teams, because the Yankees were in on Kyle Tucker. They were talking about making moves to try to get him, and apparently the Astros wanted a lot, and the Yankees weren't willing to part, because I think the Yankees have a little bit of, they just dealt with the sting of making that move with Soto, and I think they were a little bit careful and leery on doing it again. So they're probably like, you know what, we're just tested out in free agency next year. But they're just one of many teams that are going to go in and try to go after Kyle Tucker. So again, we're going to see a similar storm next year brewing for a Kyle Tucker, for a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. This is the start of something that is going to change the game going forward, because guys want to get paid. They want the money. And when you have teams like the Astros that are like, no, I'm not giving you more than 6 years, which is, for them, it's a good business model, because yeah, it's a risk when you go long term. But for these players that want long term stability and they want to get paid, well, guess what? The market is there and it's gonna be there. Of course, you want to have the season to show teams, yeah, we want to pay you this money. And I think Kyle Tucker in the Cubs is going to do that. He is going to have a massive season, because the Central Division is up for grabs. They can make a move and win that division. They're making the moves to do it.
yeah.
I don't know if the Cubs would be willing to do that in terms of keeping him, but we'll have to wait and see.
Hey,
keep in mind
Jesus,
the
before
Astros
you
won
go,
without.
Jesus, before you go on this, I want to ask you this, right? I want to put this in your brain, because this is a point that Cuz is making, Cuz Rod is making. This is the thing. Oh, now everybody wants to test at free agent waters. Well, we mentioned Francisco Lindor. We mentioned Mookie Betts, right? Whatever happened to try to sign your players early, right? So you said earlier that this whole entire industry is like cyclical, right? And now we see Vlad Guerrero Jr. Did the Toronto Blue Jays missed out on signing him to a long-term deal under a reasonable amount, right? Um, like the Boston Red Sox did with Mookie Betts. They should have offered him a contract after that second season. That's it. Try to lock him up. We looking at Kyle Tucker. The Astros missed out because they did it for Jose Altuve, but they couldn't do it for Tucker. You understand? Like, now we're in the cycle of, you know what, we'll try to get what we get in free agency. It's like the Juan Soto's. Like, I thought they tried to sign, the Washington Nationals. They were too late on trying to sign Juan Soto right away and offer him a contract. Look what Antopolis did over there with the Atlanta Braves, right? He was aggressive early, and nearly every single one of those signings panned out.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
but
thought that was going to be a trend, but now it's going the other way. Now people, guys are testing the free agent waters, and teams are not going out there and offering deals early on these star players. We saw the Kansas City Royals do it. Also, what other teams have done a pretty good job of locking up their players. But the perfect example,
Well, the Rays, your team you came from, the Rays did that for a long
the
time.
Rays were
The Mariners did that with Julio
with
Rodriguez.
Julio.
Like, there's teams that do that.
Yeah, but it seems like everything is shifting. Antopolis is the perfect example. But if I'm a player, now I am more than ever, Jesus, and you go after this, motivated to do whatever I can. And remember, a lot of people were giving Juan Soto grief over turning down 440. How is that looking now? I mean, I was one of the ones who said, look, Scott Boras doesn't do anything, by chance. There is a very deep study of market, right? That's why Juan Soto said no to the 440 by the Nationals, right? But the Nationals were too late. If they would have done that a year and a half earlier, perhaps that gets done. Jesus, go. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. What I want to make clear here that the Astros did try to sign Tucker earlier. Some kids don't want to. Some kids with 3 years to go, 2 years to go, they're like, no, I'm going to test free agency. Or like they tried. They just never reached the number that Kyle Tucker and his people wanted. Keep in mind, this is the same. Yeah, no, they made the effort. They made the effort. Yeah. Keep in mind, they gave Jose Altuve deals early to keep him. They gave Bregman a good deal early to extend him beyond, testing free agency when he could have. Yordan Alvarez is probably on the best contract team-wise in baseball. They extended him. They paid him early. The Astros do that. The Astros with Dana Brown will try to do that. That Christian Javier last year, trust me, they tried, but it takes, like Juan Soto. I'm of the opinion that when people offer you money, you take it. Meaning, if I were counseling, and this is why I'm a writer and not an agent, if I were counseling Juan Soto with the Nationals, I would have said, hey, man, you're a young guy. Take this deal now and lock your family forever. Lock it up. But you know what? When you come from a space where you're like very young, very talented, and you have an agent who can let you see the big picture, and you're already making life-changing money, I get it. But I think I look at the Yordan Alvarez deal with the Astros, the kid had missed most of the 2020 season, had surgery on both knees, and the Astros offered him a long-term deal. If I just had surgery on both knees, I'm going to take the long-term deal, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's a great deal for the Astros, but it's also a great deal for him. So it's all Juan Soto. Jose Altuve. He signed team-friendly deals because he is comfortable. He's getting handsomely rewarded. It's not like he's not getting paid, what would be value. But he's just never had the desire to go test the free agent market. He likes it here. So it's all about what you want. Like Alex Bregman has tested free agency. The Astros have tried to keep him, but it's up to him whether he wants to stay. And for a lot of these guys, with Alex Bregman, he's so smart that he's going to do the right deal based on what he has put as his parameters. And how much is staying in Houston worth? But like if I have $30 million more somewhere else, I'd probably take that. But like, where do you want to play? Like, if you've been in Houston for all this time and the people in the Bronx have treated you like crap, do you really want to go play in New York? Do you want to go play in Detroit? Like Detroit, Houston. I mean, God bless Detroit, but you could not pay me enough to live in Detroit. Like you like that Detroit, like the worst city in Major League Baseball, as far as I'm concerned, to live in.
That's
Uh, and,
that's
Damn,
wild.
yo, you're trying to make us go viral in a bad way.
Baseball
We're
time. What
gonna
are you
get
talking
killed.
about?
Carlos
Dude.
works there, man. He's gonna hear
no,
this.
no, 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 no. What I'm saying is like, what I'm saying is like, where do you want to live? Where do you want to
I
live? Where
got
do you
you.
want to play? Like
I got you.
And Brooklyn Hills
Houston,
is beautiful.
Houston, Mexican food. Detroit, no Mexican food, and I know they have a
I
great
see. Okay,
community.
fine. I
Yeah,
No,
get
no,
you coming
yeah,
from
you
the
make sense. No, it makes sense. It does. It does make a lot of sense. And Bregman, you said it. He's a smart dude, but at the end of the day, man, he wants to get paid. He wants the years, and that's why free agency. As a fan, you're looking at it's fun. Oh man, I'm getting thrown a lot of money at me. But then Carlos, and you can attest to this. It's more than that. It's about, and when Nick you said it's about the lifestyle. It's about, do I prefer warm weather? Do I not mind winter weather? Is this place more culturally appealing to me? Am I going to see a lot of people from my culture here? Like those are the things that you have to really look at when you're looking at when these players make these decisions on what they want to do and what they want their future. Now, I want to pivot a little bit and kind of stay in the realm of what we are talking about with contracts being bought out. I and again, we didn't put this in the rundown, but I just want to gauge your guys' thoughts on the teams that might be a little bit afraid now about these guys not signing these contracts and going full free agency. Would you, if you're the Reds, do you knock on Ellie De La Cruz's door right now and be like, hey, listen, let's do something, because that's the one guy that has the attention of a lot of people around baseball. He has a personality, he has the skill. Would that be one guy that you kind of say, hey, let's lock something up? What do you think, Carlos?
Yeah, I'm definitely saying yes. And this is one of those things that you do with caution. You understand that there's risks, that there's volatility in his performance. You've seen the ups and downs of his numbers, right? And the approach at the plate needs a lot of tinkering and adjusting and polishing, all of that. But you see potential there. So what you do is you go to the player and you try to organize a deal, right? Figure out a deal where both ends are happy, and you go for it and you understand the risk. The player also understands the risk, because if he goes out there and becomes an absolute animal, then he's going to be quote unquote underpaid. You got to be okay with that. And the team also takes on risk, saying if this player does not perform or to the a level that I am expecting him to, then I am going to have to assume all that risk and wear it, right? And really suffer the consequences of making that deal. So it has to be a mutual agreement. But this is the time to do it, based on the examples that I gave you just a few minutes earlier. So for these teams that are mid-market ball clubs, they have to make sure that they're able to project their stars forward. Good scouting, understanding that you have good player development. Player development does not end when you make it to the big leagues. Ellie De La Cruz still is under development. That's something that you need to always keep in mind. So your player development team personnel has to be just on at the highest level to make sure that they maximize the potential of Ellie De La Cruz, which we know is extremely talented. It has amazing tools, whichever way you look at it. So it's how much confidence do I have in my player development team, and how much confidence do I have in the player's potential. That's it.
And this is not to pick on the mid-market teams. This could be to low market, mid-market, even high market teams. Because when you make this decision, it is like what you said, Carlos. It is about making a decision for the future going forward.
They all do it. And one thing I'm trying to remember, Carlos, if you were here at the time in Houston, but John Singleton, okay, you have to know the makeup of the kid. You have to know, you have to project. He got a deal, and I think it was for like $10 million or something like that, before he ever played a single game in the major leagues. And Bud Norris ripped it, like wasn't he was in San Diego at the time, ridiculed him. Several players in Major League Baseball ridiculed Singleton for taking that deal. Well, guess what? He got $10 million, and his career never panned out as he would have expected, as the Astros expected. Goes to when somebody offers you money, take it, because if $10 million is life changing money
Yeah.
if you take care of it correctly and you build over time with it. Well, the kid ended up playing in Mexico. He ended up bouncing around. He's finally had a couple years consistent Major League Baseball playing time. So you have to know the kid. You have to know the talent. You also have to know the mental makeup. Like if I give Ellie De La Cruz, $100 million, because that's what it's going to take to just start, to him, is he going to, because what you're doing is you're buying out some arbitration years,
Mhm.
well, all the arbitration years, and usually like a year or two, usually 2 free agent years.
Yep.
And you have to figure out, but they know them, especially with the Latin American players. You've had the kid since he was 16 years old, usually. So you already know. I know what I have in Juan Soto when the Nationals made that decision. He turned down the money, but the Nationals did. The Nationals played this perfectly, right? They made their offer. He said no, and they said see ya. So they got something back. The Astros with Kyle Tucker, they knew that he probably wasn't going to stay, and they got this kid named Cam Smith, who automatically shows up and is the number one prospect in the organization. Like the
That kid is an absolute animal, man.
Yeah, and the Cubs, their farm system is so stacked, they could afford to make this deal because he was their seventh ranked prospect. Think about that. The Cubs' seventh ranked prospect is now considered the Astros' top prospect. And it takes a while. So, long story short, every team in baseball is trying to lock up their young stars as early as possible. Some will take it, some won't. And I think there's no wrong answer as far as the players are concerned, because and Carlos knows this, because one thing I've learned covering Major League Baseball for 27 years, these guys are great because of their God-given talent, but in many cases because of their mental strength, their belief in themselves. When when they all get to this level, it's about who has like that little extra thing, that intangible, and the belief in, I'm walking in this clubhouse, I'm Carlos F. and Peña, I'm gonna dominate. They all have it, right? You walk in there, every dude in there walks in like they're the man, because you have to have that in a game where failure is the biggest part of the daily life.
Yeah.
You strike out 6 times and you get 4 hits in that span, you're one of the greatest of all time, if not the greatest of all time. Nobody, very few Ted Williams out there, right?
Yeah.
You get 3 hits in 10 plate appearances, you are a rock star. So failure is part of it. So you have to have that mental makeup. And that's why I love the Juan Soto deal, because in New York, more than anywhere else, you have to be able to deal with failure. And it's not, this is a cliche, but it's true. In in New York, it's not an 162 game season. It is 162 one game seasons. Every game is like the biggest game of the year, because you have guys in the bleachers telling you you're a bum a day after you were the hero. That's just part of it. But I love this deal. I love this deal with the Mets. And one thing that I love, the Mets served Dominican food to the media when they introduced Juan Soto.
You gotta
Talk
love it.
about getting it right, man.
Yeah. Hey, and with this, guys, I think this is perfect segue because you talked about the mentality of players, right? And we're talking about a lot of changes in Major League Baseball. And you know that in this podcast, right, Plakata podcast and the Our Esquina podcast network, we seek to inspire, motivate, and empower our listeners, right? And with that, I want to go ahead and go to the quote of the day, right? Change your thoughts and you change your world. Change your thoughts and you change your world. That's Norman Vincent Peale for you. And this is perfect because we were talking about how these players go out there with the mentality, right? We see Soto achieve his incredible goal of being the highest paid player in all Major League Baseball. Well, it all started with his thoughts. He believed he could. He believed he could. All these guys believed that they could get and reach this pinnacle in the sport. And that's why they are in the place they are today. And it's a perfect example for all of us to follow, right? And everyone listening right here, it's like, hey, let's start being really, really analytical about the way we think of ourselves, because that's the first thing that we have to pay attention to. If we are able to maintain our thoughts positive and we see ourselves in a good light, then you are changing your future. And this is well beyond the hocus pocus that some people out there talk about. This is just flat out fact, right? It all starts here. It all starts here. So with that, guys, we're going to wrap up today's episode. And it's been fun. We could talk about this stuff all day, guys. All
man.
day.
Yeah.
You could see.
Oh yeah.
But we'll
yeah.
hold on and we'll bring the noise again on the next episode. So thanks everyone for being with us here in Plakata Nation. And with that, we say goodbye. Thank you. Plakata!